if Jamaica's constitutional reform process isn't about giving more power to the people, but about keeping it exactly where it's always been? Today on Politics Watch JA, we're peeling back the polished language, the photo ops, and the Republic rhetoric to expose what some believe is a deliberate delay strategy dressed up as democracy. Dr. Lloyd Barnett, one of Jamaica's most respected constitutional law experts, recently did something few insiders ever dared to do. He publicly challenged the government for excluding fixed election dates from the Republic Bill, even though the CRC he sits on formally recommended it. Was this just a political disagreement? Or did Dr. Barnett break the script and reveal something deeper, maybe even more troubling, about how this constitutional reform process is being stage managed? Let's be clear, fixed election dates aren't some radical idea. They're supported by the majority of Jamaicans, recommended by experts and promised by the government since 2016. But somehow, still missing. Instead, what we get are headline-friendly changes, term limits, a ceremonial republic, while the one reform that would actually reduce executive control in real time, still pending consensus, still in principle, still conveniently delayed. Because let's face it, controlling when an election is called, whether to dodge a scandal, strike when the opposition is weak, or ride a temporary economic high, is the last undemocratic weapon in a prime minister's toolkit. And while we're at it, let's not forget the Holness versus Integrity Commission case still unfolding in the courts, where over $470 million in unexplained transactions, redacted files, and constitutional claims are putting executive accountability under serious legal pressure. The courts are now ground zero, caught between anti-corruption enforcement, constitutional loopholes, and a political system that may not be as ready for transparency as it claims to be. So the real question is, are we watching constitutional reform, or just constitutional theater? And if it's the latter, who's writing the script? And who's benefiting most from the delay? Stick around, we're diving deep into the cracks they didn't want you to see. This is Politics Watch JA. Like, comment, and subscribe, because democracy doesn't watch itself. Prime Minister Andrew Holness and associated entities have brought a judicial review and constitutional claim challenging the fairness and legality of the Integrity Commission's, IC, investigation, the constitutionality of aspects of the Integrity Commission Act and Corruption Prevention Act, particularly the illicit enrichment provision. The case raises questions about the transparency of Holness financial affairs, with alleged links to over $470 million in transactions. Holness sought to strike out portions of a 108-page affidavit from Craig Beresford, claiming parts were scandalous, vexatious, frivolous, prejudicial, and lacking probative value. The court rejected this request, signaling that the content was responsive to Holness' own claims and fell within the affiant's personal knowledge. The court rejected this request, signaling that the content was responsive to Holness' own claims and fell within the affiant's personal knowledge. Holness requested disclosure of all documents prepared by 3 IC-affiliated individuals, including resignation letters. Justice Jarrett ruled that the request was too broad. Disclosure would be limited to specific documents if they exist, and access to redacted internal meeting records was denied as these involved other investigations. Access to redacted internal meeting records was denied as these involved other investigations. Some conspiracy theorists speculate the documents reference foreign intelligence or donor pressure pushing for anti-corruption optics in Jamaica. Redacted records may reveal internal discussions about who to investigate when and how, potentially tied to political timing, for example before elections or major policy announcements. This could explain why disclosure was denied, even if indirectly relevant to Holness' case. The refusal to disclose may be an effort to protect the identities of others named in those documents, possibly including current or former IC staff, public servants, or business elites with financial ties across multiple administrations. Holness' appeal is seen as an attempt to expose this wider agenda. His legal team may be hoping that a higher court will force transparency, blowing open what conspiracy theorists dub the redacted agenda. This case underscores the tension between anti-corruption enforcement and due process, between executive power and independent oversight. The courts now sit at the center of this conflict, and their rulings, on both procedural and substantive grounds, will shape the legal and constitutional architecture of governance in Jamaica. What if the constitutional reform process is not really about modernizing Jamaica's democracy, but about preserving a permanent strategic advantage for those in power? Dr. Lloyd Barnett, a widely respected constitutional law expert and a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, CRC, publicly called out the government for omitting a key recommendation, fixed election dates, from the Republic Bill. His stance is rooted in recommendations formally adopted by the CRC should logically be part of the reform legislation. Omitting a well-supported proposal undermines the legitimacy of both the reform process and public trust. When Dr. Lloyd Barnett publicly challenged Minister Malahoo Forte, he broke rank, momentarily exposing the orchestrated delay that reform advocates weren't supposed to question. The government promotes flashy reforms, like becoming a republic or term limits, to distract the public, while delaying the one reform that would actually limit its power in the short term. Fixed election dates. The ability to call elections at a politically convenient time is described by insiders as the last undemocratic tool of a modern prime minister. Use it to dodge scandals, capitalize on economic highs, and ambush a disorganized opposition. By avoiding legislation that removes this discretion, Prime Minister like Dr. Andrew Holness preserve a constitutional loophole of manipulation. The Constitutional Reform Committee, CRC, is a shield, an institution that gives the appearance of broad deliberative change, while delaying implementation through claims of lack of consensus or staged phases. As Malahoo Forte contends that fixed dates are accepted in principle but are not yet actionable due to lack of political consensus, a referendum might be needed which requires both time and broad agreement, and not all reforms can be implemented simultaneously. Jamaica's constitutional reform process is being stage-managed, not to empower citizens, but to entrench political control under the guise of modernization. The Constitutional Reform Committee, CRC, is publicly presented as an independent, nonpartisan body, but citizens claim it's been strategically neutralized, allowed to make bold recommendations, only to be ignored or buried later. Dr. Barnett's public challenge to Malahoo Forte is seen as a crack in the carefully curated image, exposing internal dissent the public wasn't supposed to see. The pushback on fixed election dates is viewed as deliberate foot-dragging by the ruling elite. Why? Because control over election timing gives the sitting prime minister a massive advantage, especially when public sentiment or scandals threaten their grip on power. By avoiding this reform, the administration preserves a constitutional weapon while pretending to be reform-minded. In this narrative, Dr. Barnett becomes the reluctant insider speaking truth to power. His calm but pointed pushback is seen not just as legal reasoning, but a warning that the constitutional reform process is being co-opted from within. Fixed election dates would level the playing field for opposition parties, remove the element of surprise from election calls, and prevent strategic avoidance of scandals or public backlash. By delaying this reform while claiming it's on the agenda, the government keeps the illusion of change, while retaining strategic control. The longer JLP talk about reform, the less they actually do. Barnett broke the script. He wasn't supposed to challenge her Malahoo Forte publicly. They're stalling until they're out of power, then blame the next government. This is all part of a calculated long game to maintain power through constitutional theater while delaying reforms until public interest fades, or there is a change in administration that allows blame shifting or electoral advantage is no longer needed. So here is where we leave it. If constitutional reform leaves out the one reform that actually limits power, is it really reform at all? Dr. Lloyd Barnett didn't just raise a technical concern, he pulled back the curtain on what many believe is a calculated delay, designed to preserve control under the guise of progress. Whether it's fixed election dates or redacted financial probes, the deeper pattern is clear. Delay, distract, deflect. But now it's your turn. What do you think is really behind the missing fixed election dates? Drop a comment below, don't hold back. Like, share, subscribe. Because this conversation isn't over, and if we stop watching, they win. This is Politics Watch JA. And we will be here, cutting through the noise every time they try to rewrite the script.